Hi, everyone. It's Pastor Dan with uplifting thoughts for today. I'm in Uptown Greenwood. No, not downtown. We call it Uptown here in Greenwood, which I think is a good distinction. I'm always encouraging people to keep looking up. Greenwood has always been a community not afraid of change, leaders working together to better our community. A growing progressive community from back in the days of the cotton mills to our current day, where industry, education, and medical care is expanding, and St. Mark has been a part of the community for nearly 50 years, leaving a mark of Christ. Every year, Greenwood is home to the award-winning South Carolina Festival of Flowers, one of my favorites, which includes the beautiful topiary displays all throughout the Uptown in the early summer months. I only wish we had that tradition of the topiaries back when my mother was alive, because she loved flowers and would have loved all of the displays like I do, including the tiger and the gamecock, the giraffes and the pandas, and so many more. I look forward to the new additions every year. They remind me of what my mother taught me, to bloom where you're planted. It was one of her go-to phrases. It comes from Scripture. Listen to Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 1. The prophet Jeremiah wrote a letter from Jerusalem to the elders, priests, prophets, and all the rest who had been taken to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. In other words, their world was turned upside down. Life was no longer the same. A lot like most of us are feeling in our world today, isn't it? 2020 has been a year that was turned upside down for all of us. Then we read in Jeremiah 29, verse 4, "This is what the eternal commander of the heavenly armies and the God of Israel says to those he exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon." Verse 5, "Build houses, make homes for families." Verse 6, "Marry and have children." Verse 7, "Pursue the peace and welfare of the city." Hey, that's not Jerusalem, that's Babylon. In other words, bloom where you're planted, when life is turned upside down. Whenever tragedy strikes and setbacks are experienced, there's a temptation to sulk or to give up or to give in or not worry and just live like you want. It's easy to become discouraged or bitter when life caves in upon us. So God's message to us all, bloom where you're planted, is a message of hope to a downtrodden people, or to people living in a world like none other. During times like these, God's purposes include our peace and a bright future with an eternal hope. Ecclesiastes 11:1 says, "It's still true. When you cast your bread upon the waters, you will find it after many days." Another way of saying bloom where you're planted. Oh, and don't forget God's promise later on in Jeremiah 29, verse 11. "I know the plans I have for you," God says, "plans for peace, not evil, to give you a future and a hope." Never forget that. So whenever you see a flower, let it be a reminder to bloom where you're planted. God's plan is for better days ahead. Hey, thanks for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.